Introduction to Intracellular Functions, Motor Proteins, presented by Alan Pan. This is brought to you by STEM for Tomorrow, a program dedicated to advancing scientific knowledge of high school and middle school youths. Table of contents. Today we're going to be going over the introduction, what are cells, the building blocks of life, motor proteins, and conclusions. Introduction. What are cells and why are they important to us? Background. The four macromolecules. All life is composed of mainly four macromolecule building blocks. These include carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates are usually composed of three elements at a 1:2:1 ratio with carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, respectively. Lipids are a type of fatty acids that can either be saturated, unsaturated, or trans fat. The properties include being hydrophobic or hydrophilic. Proteins are the most abundant of the organic molecules. The basic monomer of a protein is amino acid. Amino acids all have the same common structure, which consists of a carbon atom bonded to a carboxyl group, an amino group, a hydrogen atom, and a variable R group. Finally, we have nucleic acids, which are bipolymers that are essential to life. The term nucleic acid is the overall name for both DNA and RNA, which are composed of nucleotides, which are made of three components such as a 5-carbon sugar, a phosphate base, and a nitrogenous base. Cells and living organisms. The cell, which means a small room in Latin, is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all known organisms. A cell is the smallest unit of life. Cells are called the building blocks of life. Cells consist of cytoplasm enclosed within a membrane which contains many biomolecules such as proteins and nucleic acids. Most plant cells are only visible under a microscope, with dimensions between 1 and 100 micrometers. In the picture depicted is a onion root cell. What are cells? Organisms can be classified as unicellular, consisting of a single cell like bacteria, or multicellular, including plants and animals. Most unicellular organisms are classified as microorganisms. The number of cells in plants and animals varies from species to species. It has been estimated that humans contain somewhere around 40 trillion cells. The human brain accounts for 80 billion of these cells. Cells. Type of cells, Part 1. Prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells do not contain a nucleus or any other membrane-bound organelle. Prokaryotes include two types, such as bacteria and another group called archaea. Eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles, which include a nucleus. Eukaryotes can be single-celled or multicelled, such as a human like me, plants, fungi, and insects. Animal cells. They are typically a eukaryotic cell enclosed by a plasma membrane and has membrane-bound organelles. But unlike eukaryotic cells of plants and fungi, animal cells do not have a cell wall. This feature in the distant past by a single-celled organism that gave rise to the animal kingdom, Mammalia. Plant cells are the basic unit of life in organisms of the kingdom Plantae. They are eukaryotic cells which have a true nucleus with specialized organelles that carry out different functions. Anatomy of plant cells. Plants are unique among the eukaryotes, organisms whose cells have membrane includes nuclei and organelles, as we mentioned before, because they can manufacture their own food. Chlorophyll, which gives plants their green color, enable them to use sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugars and carbohydrates, which are food for the cells. Anatomy of animal cells. All animal cells are made up of various parts. These parts are called subcellular structures. The parts of a cell that use specific function are called organelles. The main parts of an animal cell are the cell membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, mitochondria, and ribosomes. Motor proteins. What are motor proteins? Motor proteins are a class of molecular motors that move along the cytoplasm of animal cells. They convert chemical energy into mechanical work by the hydrolysis of ATP. In biochemistry, ATP is the molecular currency of intracellular energy transfers. It is a means of storing and transporting chemical energy within the cell. Hydrolysis of the phosphate bonds releases energy that can be used by a variety of enzymes, motor proteins, and transfer proteins to carry out the work of a cell. Types of motor proteins. Motor proteins utilizing the cytoskeleton for movement fall into two categories based on their substrate, or what they're walking on: microfilaments or microtubules. Actin motors, such as myosin, move along the microfilaments through the interaction with actin. Microtubule motors, such as dynein and kinesin, move along on the microtubules. My research focused on microtubule motors, in particular the kinesin motor protein. The kinesin motor protein. One of the most amazing examples of cellular nanotechnology is a molecular protein known as kinesin. Kinesin is responsible for transporting molecular cargo, including chromosomes during cell division, neurotransmitters, and other important material, all along the microtubule tracks from one region of cell to another. As I mentioned before, it's driven by ATP hydrolysis, therefore converting chemical energy into mechanical energy, which uses it for movement. Kinesin. Because cells are so tiny, many cellular processes use simple random diffusion to get from one place to another. However, for small molecules and proteins, random diffusion is fast enough to get the job done. But for some larger tasks, cells have to take a more active approach. This is where molecular proteins come in. Cells make a variety of motors that drag large cellular objects to their proper destinations. Kinesins are used for many tasks in the cells. Kinesins drag large objects such as lysosomes, endoplasmic reticulum outwards from the nucleus and towards the surface. Thank you for watching. Have any questions, please reach out to us. My email is alanpan6@hotmail.com, or you can contact us on our website, stemfortomorrow.org.